Hello and welcome to the Gooner Tool, back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our TGT podcast, our weekly show in which we look back at the weekend's fixture and look ahead to what it might mean for the upcoming games. And my God, what a game we had to break down. The Raw reaction show was, well, raw, and it was a reaction in terms of what we saw from the game. And we saw a reaction from the players and from the manager and from a certain Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. We're going to get onto that and more with my three fantastic guests, so let's crack on with it. Hello, people. I'm joined by three fantastic people. First of all, it's the man who looks like he's got the cloudiest glasses you've ever seen in your life. It's Tom. How you doing, mate? Are you well? Oh, he's gone. That was good timing. Great. Fantastic. Ruined the intro for Tom. I'm sure he'll be back in a second. Pablo, though, our expert member. How you doing, mate? Are you well?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having us again.
No problem at all, mate. We were just talking about your career as a youth footballer. I mean, we might have to do like a tactical breakdown on Pablo Mira's youth career.
My Sunday league thing, mate.
Oh, definitely something to look at. Speaking of which, we did do a tactical breakdown earlier on today, as requested by Jess. I mean, I was planning on doing it, but Jess did send me a message saying, I need to know. I need to know about this guy. So it's there. I mean, have you seen it yet, or have you been too busy to
I've been so busy today. I haven't had time to get to it, but I'll definitely get to it at some point. Yeah, but thank you for doing that. I was really interested in knowing who this person is. You know?
Yeah, he is an interesting player to look at, and someone that we will definitely be maybe learning a lot more about should these links come to fruition, and that will obviously take place in the summer. First of all, thank you to Ed for the super chat. You've been very generous, Ed. I don't know what's wrong with you, son, but thank you so much. Appreciate that, mate. Deepest apologies, Tom. Bringing dinner for the missus on me tomorrow. I know what this is about, because Ed, I might even have to send this back because it's ridiculous. But Ed rang me by accident through Discord. I didn't know this was possible. I didn't know you could ring people. But at 3 a.m. in the morning, I was rung by one of our members by complete accident. I didn't even see it until the morning. But had I been woken up by Ed at 3 a.m., he would have got a very different response. But thankfully, slept through the whole thing, so he didn't know about it. Anyway, we're going to try and get Tom back as soon as possible. Not sure what's going on with his connection. Pablo, I'm going to start with you, mate. Yesterday's game was an experience, because you're sitting 4-0 up, you're comfortable, and then suddenly a couple of goals start going and you're going, oh crap, we're gonna it's another Newcastle all over again. What was your reaction to it, mate?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, first half absolutely brilliant. I can sort of compare it to the Wolves first half, obviously apart from the penalty decision at the end, and to me, I thought we was going to absolutely run riot, especially in the second half, because we tend to be a little bit better in the second half. But then once Leeds started scoring, I got to admit, I started getting a little bit scared, and Newcastle just came flashing back in my head, and I was like, oh, please don't.
I can't get my head round how you can sit so comfortably at 4-0 up and just one, like it's not even the second one, even after one goal, Jess. There was a little bit of the bottom of my stomach just going like, yeah, I can see where this is going to go. And then when Willian came on, it got even worse.
Yeah.
How were you feeling after we did kind of concede that goal at 4-0 up?
I was so uncomfortable. And I was like, this is so irrational. We're up 4-1. But I literally was like, there's enough time for them to come back. And I think it's more it wasn't so much about us. It's more about the opponent for me, because Leeds, they don't give up. They're one of the only teams that I know of that can go 4-0 down and continue to play, because that's just a part of the ethos of that team, you know? So I was very afraid. Like, I could not wait for the game to be over. But then after I rewatched it and I could actually enjoy it. But during the game, I was very afraid. Like, I was like, they definitely could come back and make it 4-4.
When they hit the second and there was still half an hour to go, I was like, okay, this is well within the realms of possibility here that we could utterly ruin ourselves. Tom, we have got you back, mate. Are you there? Can you hear us? Oh, delay. Tom, are you there, son? No, but we're going to go with no. I'm going to send him a text and try and sort things out with Tom. He's having an absolute Leeds of it. He's having a Willian of a show, is what we're going to describe it as. Pablo, let's talk about kind of the lineup after we've now got your reactions, because it was an interesting lineup to be given these players on the screen an hour before kickoff. Whenever we look at it, the surprise of not seeing Pepe, the surprise of seeing both Smith Rowe and Erdegaard on the same time was interesting, considering the fact that Ceballos was there, and you've effectively, for a player at Real Betis that was also a 10, you've got 3 10s in the lineup, and for a team that didn't have a single 10 before Christmas, it's quite crazy that now we have 3 playing in the same game. What did you make of it all?
Well, me and yourself put Odegaard and Smith Rowe on our starting lineup. I kind of, for some odd reason, had a feeling he was going to go with that. I think the reason why he'd done it, though, is more to accommodate Aubameyang going through the middle. With having them sort of 3 10s as such, their natural sort of game is to play it through the channels and sort of in between spaces, pocket of spaces and stuff like that, which then gave Aubameyang the freedom to run on to a lot of these passes and sort of find himself free in the box. So I actually think it's a really clever tactics from Arteta. It may not work with some other teams, but with Leeds, Leeds ain't going to sit back. Like Jess said earlier, they'll just keep coming and coming and coming at you. So why not? Why not use that space in behind Leeds and have 3 playmakers to be able to feed the ball to Aubameyang and look at the results?
Can't hear you, Tom.
Can't hear you, Tom.
That's me being the utmost professional that I am, putting myself on mute. Aubameyang is the player that he decided to go for up front, Jess. Was that, for you, the right choice? So it's easy to say with hindsight, yes, he scored a hat-trick. Of course it was the right choice. But ahead of the game, he'd come on against Wolves, he'd come on against Villa, and not really offered too much in either of those games. Were you apprehensive about seeing him up top?
Not so much, just because my mind was really on the Benfica game. And I was thinking to myself, like, we have to start rotating some of these players because it's going to get tough in the next couple of weeks. So in my mind, in my predicted lineup, Aubameyang was there because he needs to get back into the team in some way, shape, or form. I was shocked to see him at center forward a little bit because I was like, okay, well, he doesn't usually play well there, but that's really the only place that he could play so that you could also rest Lacazette. So I didn't have a problem with it. I think, like Pablo said, having an additional technician in behind him really gave him the opportunity to play as a low-touch center forward, which is the only way that he can play as a center forward. So it worked out, and it gave us a different look to the front 4 that I don't think before this game we thought was possible. And talking about options at this point is a really nice conversation to have for an Arsenal fan.
Yeah. It's when you look at Pablo, him as a player, we've invested a contract in him. We've given him that huge deal. Lacazette's got a year left, and Nketiah's got a year left after this season. Do you think that Arsenal are making the right decision now in investing the time into starting Aubameyang and maybe taking kind of their foot off the gas in regards to the likes of Lacazette and Nketiah?
Yeah, I don't think they've really got much of a choice. We've invested the money, as you said, into his contract. He's the player that we've gone for. Lacazette's got a year left on his contract, and Eddie Nketiah is exactly the same. Balogun's about to go, or possibly about to go. So that's who you've invested your money on. You have to back him. And the thing is, his record speaks for itself. I mean, you look at the goals history that he's got in the previous seasons, and even this season. Okay, he's got off to a bad start. He's had his personal family issues and so on. But now that it's sort of kick-starting again, that's, I believe, 5 goals in 2 games. That's phenomenal. He carries on like that, he'll be back up near top goal scorer again.
He has kind of had this dip in form. And Jess, do you think the dip in form's been like a personal, introverted thing? Or how much, I suppose, does the blame fall on Arteta not getting the best from him during this period either?
For me, with Aubameyang, I think the majority of it was a mental aspect of things. I'm not privy to any personal information about Aubameyang, but, to me, it was either confidence or physical decline. To me, I was afraid that was the case, that he had fallen off of a cliff, which a lot of players do in the latter years of their career. And I did do like a really short podcast with Dr. Raj. He's a sports scientist, and he said from his professional opinion, it was all confidence with Aubameyang. He just didn't seem like he was, he felt like he could win the battles. He didn't look confident. And you could even see from the first goal, that was pure confidence. That was vintage Aubameyang getting that ball. He knew exactly what he was going to do before he even got the ball. And those are things that we weren't seeing from before. Now, do I know if that's, due to Arteta or not? I'm not sure. I think it was a consequence of having the wrong tactics with the wrong players, square pegs and round holes, and not having a system that maybe suited him. But you saw yesterday that when he had the right people in behind him, he flourished. So moving forward, I think that that's the way to go. But up until this point, I think it's just been such a rough season that we can't really pinpoint what it was, but it could be a little bit of a lot of different things. So we don't really know for sure.
Let's see what some of the people in the chat box are saying about it. Josiah says Alba is not an impact player and he needs to start games. And maybe that's why, of course, he didn't really offer too much against Villa or Wolves. Ed says Aubameyang looked to be running free, drilled by guys more yesterday than he did in the first 2 months combined. Who knows how much things were weighing on his mind during that time. Yonick Mack says Alba's hold-up play was so bad, but you can have a trampoline touch if you score a hat-trick for all I care, which is a great point. Daniel Roberts says, we have so many options. I'd happily see Saka, Martinelli and Milsmith throw Ødegaard, Pepe, Aubameyang, Lacazette and Nelson play in those attacking areas. I don't know how I managed to get through all those names without messing up at least once.
No Willian?
No, moving on. Cookie Monster says, I believe it was how little creativity we had around him. He has never created chances for himself. Oh, I'm not sure about. I mean, the first goal he scored was effectively creative for himself with the run into the box, the step overs, the cut to the right, and then hitting it near post. He has got that as ability. We think back to last season, I think it was the start of last season against Burnley when he cut inside from the left and then smashed that shot in the bottom left-hand side. I still think that is part of his game and certainly something he can add, but he just needs to have the confidence and the time to be able to do it. Doug says Aubameyang was frustrated because he was making runs and no one was passing it forwards to him. A great goal scorer needs creative players to score. And Yonick says Jess is on thin ice with that Willian joke. Pablo, when you're thinking about the players that we did put around him, you did touch briefly on Emil Smith Rowe and Ødegaard being there together. But do you think those two and the kind of a re-arrival, I suppose, of Aubameyang's goal scoring, do you think those two go hand in hand, or is it more coincidental?
I wouldn't say coincidental. I think it's more tactical, depending on your opponent. I mean, if you go and play, let's just say Burnley, for an example, that could be a completely different outcome than to playing Leeds, who are going to literally open up the field for you. I think Arteta will probably use this a lot more, as it's worked. I can't see why he wouldn't trust that system. It seems to have worked. But I think he'll be very careful about who he picks or which opponent we sort of have that formation with.
We also saw David Luiz start, Pablo, in this game over Rob Holding, which a lot of people kind of thought was a bit of a surprise. Rob Holding's played a lot of games. We got Benfica in midweek. Do you think it was a tactical change or purely to give Rob Holding a bit of a rest?
I think it might have been to give him a rest, to be honest with you. I think Arteta's got a lot of faith in Rob Holding, a lot of faith in him. And given the choice, if we didn't have so many games and obviously Benfica coming up, I think you would have seen Holding start, and then he would have been in the argument of David Luiz or Gabriel as the left-sided centre-back. But I think Holding is pretty much his sort of first-choice centre-back on that right-hand side.
Yeah, it's interesting because, Jess, there was part of me that thought that maybe, and Gabriel I thought was excellent in this game as well. I thought he had a really good kind of come back from those poor defensive fixtures we've seen him. I didn't think he was great against Villa. I didn't think he had the best game when he came on against Wolves either. And before he got his suspension and the COVID situation, he was looking a little bit off the pace from the first 3 months of football that we saw him. But next to Luiz, he's got his compatriot there, the communication, both of them speaking Portuguese together, or he doesn't have that same clear link when he plays next to Holding. Do you think those two playing together will boost each other, the fact that they are compatriots and have that clear communication together?
Yeah, I think naturally it would. I do think when you see them two play together, you can see that there's some sort of chemistry there, which is good for us because ultimately we've spent quite a bit of money on Gabriel, so we want him to get that boost from Luis. The best possible scenario for us with them two playing together is that Gabriel gets some of that that experience from David Luiz, that they have some sort of chemistry and all that kind of stuff. But I still think that our best center back pairing to me at this far has been Rob Holding and Marie. I go back to that pairing and I feel so confident about it. That was when I felt like we couldn't be stopped, was when those two were back there together, because I think there was a nice balance of, experience, confidence, leadership, responsibility, those types of things. But I think in the four of them, we have a good foundation for center back pairings that moving forward is pretty solid compared to what we've had in the past. So I'm happy with all the kind of combinations, except for I do think Holding and Gabriel is probably the worst pairing out of those. So.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you'd look at those two as maybe being individually our best centre-back performers, Holding on the right and Gabriel on the left, but together that same synergy is maybe not there. But it's great to think that you've got those two partnerships of Gabriel and Luis, then Holding and Pablo. And to think Arsenal in the past, the depth we had at centre-back was so light and so poor. And now we've got two partnerships that seemingly work really well together. Pablo, what we didn't see was Bukayo Saka start at left-back. It was only Kian in the preview show that predicted that Cedric would, that he would have rather seen Cedric playing at left-back. So he had, of course, his best friend Bellerin playing at right-back. But it kind of worked. Cedric was good again, I thought, at left-back. I thought he'd been a little bit exposed against Villa and arguably a little bit against Wolves as well. But I thought Cedric had a really solid game. Bellerin scored, which often for a lot of people completely negates the rest of the performance. But I still thought he kind of struggled still on that right-hand side.
Yeah, Cedric, in my opinion, had a really good game. Nearly scored his screamer as well.
He nearly did.
He was nearly there. But Bellerin, like I said before, I've given up on him. I really have. I can't see what he offers to us. Defensively, he's not solid. Going forward, yeah, he scored a goal, and I'll give him that. It was a very well taken goal. But that's it, really. That is literally all you saw from him was that goal. Anything else, you can just... I think you find, not just in this game, but in most games as well, you'll see that other teams know that that's our weak side, the right-hand side, and they literally explore us on there. They know, especially when Tini's playing, they won't go down there. Now, if we had Cedric on the right, I think other teams will respect that side of the field a little bit more with him playing.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because Bellerin has obviously been such a long-serving player at the club. And actually, I thought his offensive game was what I kind of banked upon to back him and support him. And it was actually defensively where I had a lot of questions about Bellerin. And now it's both ends of the pitch. Jess, do you have anything kind of different towards Bellerin? Do you have more sympathy for him? Or is he someone that you'd be looking to upgrade upon as well in the future?
Well, if you've ever listened to anything that I've ever put out there, I don't love Bellerin. He's not my favorite right back. So yeah, I think I would love to upgrade on him, but the reality is that where we are in terms of a club, a project financially, he's not the first thing that we should be looking to replace. I really don't see him as the main, issue at Arsenal if that's what we're talking about. So for me with Bellerin, it's more about the fact that he can be a defensive liability, but we have to remember that a lot of the movements that he's making are told, like Arteta is telling him to do these things. He's not coming out of his pocket and leaving us exposed, and Arteta standing right there and not saying anything to him. This is the plan. The plan is for him to underlap and to be almost like an additional midfielder. I compared it to, Arteta is pretty much using Bellerin like Pep uses Cancelo. It's very similar where he's the underlapping, almost like a midfielder type. What happens is you get exposed when the team is smart enough to hit the ball into that pocket because he's all the way up into the offense. But the trade-off, everything is risk and reward. I think a lot of times we're not rewarded because of Bellerin's final ball. I think that's where the problem is that the reward is better when we get the goal. Yesterday, it wasn't a problem because we got the goal. But usually, to me, the final ball is poor. He either is crossing it up by people's necks instead of just a simple ball to their feet, or his shot is way over the goal, or it's not hard enough or something like that. So, like I said, everything is risk versus reward. We have to remember that these players are being coached, by somebody. So the things that he's doing is not just what he does, it's what Arteta is telling him to do. And ultimately, as a team, we're not going to be able to, as a club, to replace everybody. And I just don't think Bellerin is the biggest problem at Arsenal at this point. So that's kind of how I think about him.
In the chat box, let's see what some of you guys are saying in regards to the whole of the back line. Yonik says, wonder if Holding comes back in or if he starts Louise on Thursday. It seems interesting to see which one, of course, he does pick. Dan Robert reckons that Holding and Louise are going to start on Thursday. Scrolling down a bit further, Juan says Gabriel does not deserve to be dropped since he has returned. It's been excellent. Matthew de Souza says Pablo Marie has impressed me the most of all of them, although I felt that about Gabriel until he had that wobbly period towards Christmas. Dan Roberts says Cedric had a great game. I thought he got the assist for Alba's third goal. You're reaching there a bit, Dan, to try and give him an assist, to be honest. That's Ozil levels of assessment, trying to find that little assist there. Ansgar says Bellerin travels really well with the ball. He obviously needs to improve his passing and crossing, but I think he can prove many wrong. Obviously, he's going to be in the team until at least the summer, unless we see Tierney come back and Cedric play on that right-hand side. I want a player to turn my mind. I want a player to convince me that I'm wrong and to make me change my opinion on them. And Bellerin's definitely got that challenge ahead of him now. As we come to kind of the just before the halfway point of the show, a couple of things to talk about is that our partnership with Football Prizes is continuing indefinitely. And there is a hell of a prize on right now, it's fair to say, because we've got a signed Dennis Bergkamp shirt available. Now, even though this prize runs from Friday to Friday, if I just refresh my screen here, it is already more than halfway sold out. 55 of the 99 tickets have been sold so far. So if you would like to get in with a chance of winning a signed, certified with the certificate Bergkamp shirt, then make sure you click the link in the description and head over to the Bergkamp prize to try and get your best chance of winning it. And the second thing, I just want to give a big shout out to our good friend Owen Young, who was meant to be on this evening, couldn't make it for personal reasons. I'm not going to give the details because it is very personal to him, but I think he would appreciate anyone sending over a DM and just saying that he's in your thoughts. So I'd appreciate if anyone could do that, and I'm sure he would too. Jashar says it's really weird, but Bellerin is at his most effective when he makes direct central runs, when he looks to pass rather than cross. And the team in general and the fluidity and the movement that we've started to see be created, I think, has not only come from the wide areas, but Jess, the introduction of Ceballos and Erdogan and Emile Smith-Rowe is really exciting because I talked to Pablo earlier about the three number 10s being in the team, but we were without Thomas Partey, and Ceballos came in and fit the system like a glove.
Yeah, I think this was the perfect game for this because ultimately Leeds leaves the back door open all the time. So, we were able to, I think our shape was better and we were prepared more than Leeds were. So we were able to take advantage of it, and having additional technicians out there gave us the ability to really just go and attack them the way that I've never really seen us do before. I thought Danny looked amazing in this game, and I know that he plays a little bit deeper, so he has a little bit more defensive responsibility, but it was nice to see him kind of come out of his pocket and go and kind of be more a part of the offense. Usually he plays sitting right in front of the defense. He didn't really do that today or yesterday in yesterday's game. I think it's good. We're talking about, again, options, things that we didn't have even just a couple months ago. Before it seemed like Willian was the number 10. Now we have 3 number 10s that are not Willian. So that's great, So for me, this won't work in every single game. We're going to need a Thomas Partey and a Xhaka, and we're going to need a more solid, we're not going to be able to just come out of our pockets all the time and attack the way that we did. But in this game, it was the perfect balance, and having so many attackers and just going strength for strength against them, I think was best, because I said it before the game. I think that we'll score more goals than them, but I also, I think they can't defend. So if we just go strength for strength, I think we'll beat them. And that's exactly what happened. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think Ceballos, it's an interesting comment from Yannick in the chat. He says it looked like Ceballos took the trailer off his back, and he does sometimes look like he's running with like so much on his shoulders, and he
He's
gets
so
kind of bogged down
slow.
with that. Yeah, which is weird because when I watched him in La Liga against Betis, the short accelerations that he was able to do was one of the best parts of his game. But since moving to, maybe not since moving to Arsenal, but certainly this season at Arsenal when he's played, he's looked a little bit sluggish. And yeah, leggy's a good word. And I think that he in general has looked at what's ahead of him with Xhaka playing better in the second half of the season and Partey obviously coming back into fitness, although we were without him, which is what gave Ceballos the opportunity. And I think he sees those guys, and El Neni, who came back, of course, too. And he's got a lot of competition. And maybe that disheartened him to think he's not going to carry on that partnership that he had with Xhaka that was so successful to get us towards that FA Cup win. The real Janice in the chat says, I was listening to Tan, who I'm reliably informed now is the bearded gooner. Because I always go so far down the line of knowing everyone as kind of their associative names on social media. I'm like, who is Tanner? Of course, the bearded gooner. Earlier on, he said Holding is going to be the starting right back next season. Am I crazy that bothers me so much? I don't know. It's interesting, isn't it, Pablo? Because we've got a young kid. We've got two young kids actually on loan who can play right centre back in Saliba and Mavropanos. And I look at Holding as a very good player for Arsenal to have in the long term in the squad. But as kind of Arsenal's starting right back going forwards, is he going to be the guy that I look at Arsenal being as a starting right back in a top 4 team? I'm not quite sure he's at that level.
No, me neither, to be honest with you. I'd like him in a squad for long term. As you said yourself, he'll be a very, very good backup. And if you get injury and cup games and stuff like that, he's the perfect player to bring on because you know he'll do the job. He's steady. But if we want to challenge for European spots and cup competitions and so on, I think we need someone just a little bit better than him, in my personal opinion. I mean, Saliba's been doing quite well since he left us. Mavropanos has been doing really well as well over in Germany. So, you know, I mean, the door could be open for them, one of them to sort of fight him for that position, unless we give David Luiz
some of the errors and relying on people that have made consistent errors themselves at the club. I get what he does in the behind the scenes. I get that he does this and that. But I just feel like if Arsenal are going to move to that next level, then we need to think about, you know, saying thanks for the memories, Luis, but it's time to say goodbye, sort of thing. I'm reliably informed that Tom can now hear us. Tom, are you there, mate?
I am. I've had a epic failure of sound and audio, mate. So apologies. I've had to use my laptop speaker and audio. So hopefully there's no feedback. How's everyone doing?
All good. All good. Yes. You've joined us for the most entertaining part of the show, which is where I'm going to ask you is a very simple question, Tom. Why did Willian come on?
Oh my gosh.
I think we're maintaining his value because I think with such a high profile player on such a big salary, does it really make sense just letting him rot on the bench, right? I think, you know, with some of the other young guys we've got, like Martinelli, we know what he's about, we know what he can do. But with Willian, I think at his age, we got to keep him active. We've got to give him minutes. The game was essentially won at that point. So, you know, I feel like, yes, you could bring on Martinelli, but, you know, what's the point? Ultimately, Willian needs minutes, right? He's a big money player. He's a first, you know, team kind of squad player. He's got to get minutes, right? So we're winning 4-1, you know, at home. You know, why wouldn't you bring on Willian? You know, if the game is...
I can give you a good few reasons.
You know, but I'm looking at it from a management perspective. And, you know, it's kind of like that, you know, I do think when you're trying to get players off the squad, you've got to give them minutes. You've got to put them in the shop window. It's like when you send players out on loan. There's no point. Look at Martin Odegaard, for example. You know, is it better he's out at loan playing for Arsenal, getting minutes, or sitting on the bench at Real Madrid? It's not doing anything for his value. So I think Edu and Arteta are like between a rock and a hard place. You know, yeah, he doesn't really add much, but you also need to maintain his value so you can get rid of him. So, and I think, I mean, us Arsenal fans probably went crazy, overreacted. But as a neutral, you look, you know, he came on, passed it a bit, gave it away a bit. Arsenal won the game. So does it overall hurt his value? Probably not. I mean, but if we're behind in the game, would we want him to come on? No. And let's be honest, he's not starting games at the moment. So, I mean, I'd be more concerned if Arteta was still forcing him in to the first team, and he's not. So that's why I'm most excited that, we've got, that kind of Wenger-style football back. We've got more fluid players playing, and Arteta's not starting him. So I'm more happy about that than him getting minutes, at the end of the game when it's like a dead rubber and we've already won.
I appreciate the sense that you have said there. Like everything you said to me, it makes complete sense. You've answered the question, and I understand the theory. The counter argument I think that would come from me is that you've got someone like Martinelli on the bench. As Jess was saying earlier, Leeds are a team that do not give up no matter what the scoreline is. That you saw that in the game when they were battered by Man United at Old Trafford. They didn't give up. They keep going. And when you're 4-1 up, and there's still 35 odd minutes of the game left, and then they score another one just, I think, 7 minutes after Willian came on, that decision will be questioned. I just want to show something quite comedically funny that I was sent today, and Hugh Izzy tagged me in it. It's the reaction of me and Hugh on the watch along when Willian comes on. I found this just hilarious. Both of us are just complete pain. Yeah, in complete pain.
I'll ask, have you ever seen a player drop off like that before, though?
No, of course not. No.
I mean, there must be something more to it, because it just doesn't make sense.
Jess, what do you? I was going to say, what do you make of kind of Tom's argument about why we're playing him?
Well, our subs have patterns, so when the game is won, Willian comes on. That's kind of how it is. He's the first sub whenever we're up 3 or 4 goals. He comes in, he finishes out the game. I don't see a big issue with it because he didn't lose us the game. They scored another goal when he was on, but it wasn't like he was directly involved with it or anything like that. I think at this point, Arteta's trying to play him enough where it's not like, I think the less you play him, the more of a conversation it becomes. You have this guy that you're paying however much that is a Premier League proven player, that's just rotting on the bench. So I think he's trying to give him just enough playing time in situations that don't matter. I think that's kind of where he's coming from. It's difficult because we don't really know what the ins and outs of the scenario is. Is it contractual? Is it what? Or does he practice really well? What is it? And in regards to Martinelli, I know everybody wants to see Martinelli play. I want to see Martinelli play, but he just hasn't looked the same since he's come back in. So I really do believe in my heart that Arteta is trying to ease him back in because he's afraid of the injuries becoming a recurring problem. And we don't really need Martinelli. We just named all of the people that we have that we can use up top. We don't really need Martinelli right now. We don't. We want to see him and we want him to progress, but we don't need him the way that we need Saka, the way that we need Aubameyang and stuff like that. So I want to think that Arteta is managing Martinelli and he's bringing on Willian in games that don't matter. But it is frustrating watching him come on and be absolutely garbage, so I think we just have to deal with it. I hope there's a contingency plan to get rid of him sooner rather than later. But I wouldn't be surprised if this is just something we have to just deal with for the next couple of years.
We've given him a long-term contract. It's a big, big wage in a pandemic where clubs aren't going to be able to afford to just say, yeah, you know what, a really good decision would be to go and bring Willian in. I can't see it happening, and it would cost Arsenal a lot of money to continue their form of terminating contracts as well if that was the case. So, I can't see him moving on in the summer. Arteta, I brought a piece on it today about Arteta effectively said back after the Newcastle game in the FA Cup that he said they're going to keep trying with him and they're going to keep trying to get something from him, because I think, as Tom said, no one expected him to be this bad. No one would have seen this drop-off in form from last year. It has been very bad, and only fingers crossed we can. I don't think anyone would turn around and say that they don't want Willian to turn things around. We do want him to, obviously, when he does play, give what we know has previously been shown on at Chelsea and what we saw against Fulham as well. No one can take away from that performance. I don't care it was Fulham. He still played exceptionally well in that game and got 2 assists. So it is there. It's just the
Wasn't that
consistency.
because he was so close to Chelsea in that game, though? It was literally
because it was in West London. Yeah, probably. That could be a reason. Pablo, I don't want to move on without giving you a chance to have your thoughts on this situation. So what are you, after Jess and Tom have spoken about it, what do you make of it?
To be honest with you, they both made really, really, really good points. I kind of agree with both of you and understand, but my Arsenal heart is telling me I don't want to see him in the squad. I really don't. I get it. I get why. For me, I think we'll have more use of our time investing it in playing, say, for example, a Pepe that is going to be here a long time, and Martinelli or someone like that, and giving them the game time. Obviously, Pepe is a starter now, but I'm just saying about this game yesterday. I would have preferred to have seen someone like Pepe coming in. We're all over Leeds. Yeah, even though they at that stage they were sort of attacking us throughout the game, it was all over them. Bringing on someone like Pepe or Martinelli, I don't think it would have been a harm. We wouldn't have harmed them at all. If anything, it could have been more beneficial because we were the team on top. Rather than bringing on a Martinelli when we're losing a game and trying to get back, you're kind of putting the pressure on the 19-year-old to get us out of trouble. Yeah. I think these are the sort of games where you should want to bring him on if you don't want him to get injured and if you don't want to put too much pressure on him, because the game's won.
Yeah, well, we say that. It very nearly wasn't. There was a lot of time left with just a 2-goal lead, but we did hang on for the victory. So anyway, that kind of concludes the talk of that game specifically. Now I want to look ahead with the last kind of 10 to 15 minutes before we go on to user questions, is looking at where this places us, because it's so congested. It's so busy in the top half of the table between fourth place. There's 6 points now between us and fourth place, which was Liverpool. In fact, I think as Chelsea are currently winning, that probably takes the gap slightly larger. But Tom, what do you make of the congestiveness of how much it is kind of between the top 6 teams, between 4 and 10th? That this win, which was important considering how tricky our upcoming fixtures are, where does this place us for you going forward for the rest of the season?
I think it's a good question. I'm, we always have this chat at this time of the year, and then we start counting all the points. We did that last year. We looked at the remaining games, and I had us winning like 23 out of 30 points or something. So I do want to be optimistic. I think we've come into form at the right time. I think we've recovered from a lot of major injuries. We finally got a bit of rotation and depth in an attacking sense. So I think it's good. I think, anyone who can string 3 or 4 games together, get 2-3 victories and a draw is basically in the top 4. So, but, when you look at that fixture list, it does not look positive, right? Let's be honest, because if we don't get results in the next 3-4 games, then it goes from being 6 points to 8 or 9 points, and then in addition to the 6, so then we're completely out of it. So it's good that we're there now, but we need to go into these next games with confidence. I don't think we can be looking at City and saying, oh, it would be nice to, we should be looking to win. We need to go out and play against them, and our attack, when we're flowing, we're not that far off them. So we've got to go out with the right mentality and look to pick up points in every single game. Because if we get a shock result, maybe a draw or a win against City, that just changes the whole mood. But then obviously we've got a difficult time midweek. So I think Arteta's got to earn his salary this week. He's got a lot on his plate, but he's got a strong squad. So I think that we do have the potential to do it. We've been there before, and as you always say, it's the hope which gets you. So, but I think it's there. I think it's reasonable. I think it's not too bad. But it has to start at City. We've got to make a statement after the big victory on the weekend.
Jess, there's these 2 games as well that sandwich City, which is so key to our season as well, against Benfica. We could arguably have not been given a tougher kind of first knockout round in the Europa League to go up against a side as good as Benfica. When you look at these 2 games, which do sandwich a league match against the best side in the country, arguably the form side in Europe right now, and with how strong City are, do you think Arteta is in any way looking at that City game and going, the likelihood is that we're going to not being able to pick up too many points that game, and we need to ensure that we progress through the Europa League. So do you think he's going to be looking at prioritising these 2 Europa League games over the City fixture at the weekend?
No, I don't. I think that Arteta is a very confident person, and I've yet to see him put out a lineup that literally says, we're throwing this or we're not putting anything into this. I've yet to see it. Even the Southampton team that he put out in the FA Cup, to me, was strong enough to beat Southampton that day. So I do think he'll rotate, but I don't think he'll prioritize to the point where it's obvious that we're doing. Arteta has a lot of pride. This man, I mean, this is somebody who took on in his first coaching job a really bad Arsenal side. You know, this man has confidence. So I feel like he will still put out a really strong lineup against Man City. And I think, quite frankly, since we dropped points against Wolves and Aston Villa, we have to make it up somewhere. You know, at some point, we're going to have to take points off of teams that are actually above us. We've yet to take points off of an informed team yet this season. If you really think about it, all the teams that we beat were either at the beginning of their slump or they were their relegation form. So at some point, we're going to have to grow up and take points off of one of the big dogs. Unfortunately, we're coming up against City, so it's going to be difficult, but it wouldn't be like out of the realm of possibility that we could get a tie there. You know, and with Benfica, even with a rotated squad, we should be able to get through. I think it's a mental game with us. I don't think it's necessarily about the players that we have and them not being good enough. It's mentally saying we're going to beat Benfica and we're going to do something against Man City. I think it's within the realm of possibility, but again, the mental aspect, you know, and that also you have to take into account the type of players that you have in those games. You know, do we want to risk it with a David Luiz? I'm not sure. Do we want to put a Willian out there? Probably not, you know, so.
It's
but
the right answer.
I see strong squads every single game for the rest of the season. I don't see any prioritizing because realistically, we need to put everything we can into both competitions, the Premier League and the Europa League.
Pablo, I'll follow that on then, just to say, do you think that there is enough strength in depth in the squad that Arteta's got available to him? Like we just talked there to Tom about Willian, giving him minutes where possible. We've got Martinelli on the bench. Both him and Pepe didn't start and didn't play at the weekend whatsoever. You've got these guys on the bench like Pablo Mari that has performed well. Rob Holding was rested. We haven't really got any kind of backup fullbacks at the moment while Tierney is out, although from what we're hearing from Arteta is he could be back for the Manchester City game, which obviously would be huge for us. And then you've got Lacazette that didn't play either at the weekend, and you've got that ability to rotate. So do you think that we have got enough depth to go far in the Europa League whilst maintaining the pace in the Premier League as best as possible?
Yeah, I think we do. It's quite funny, actually, because at the beginning of the season, I remember looking at our bench and going, oh, we stand no chance sort of thing. But somehow it's just all changed. And you can look at a bench now and you can actually think to yourself, do you know what? We've got so many game changers that can come on and do something. Lacazette, Martinelli, whether Pepe's starting or not, you don't know. Odegaard, all these sort of players. I mean, we'd never had that before. And our back line has been consistent throughout. No matter who's played there, okay, you've had the odd game where they've not done so well, an individual player. But in general, defensively, we've been great. And I think the thing that we've been missing this season, and touch wood is now changing, was Aubameyang's goals. Because if we had Aubameyang's goals that he had last season, with the defensive record that we got this season, we would be in a much different place in the league right now. And City, although City are great, they are brilliant, they're a fantastic team, but we're doing quite well with the top teams. All the top teams that we've played so far, we've been there and thereabouts. I mean, Chelsea, United, even with Liverpool, they didn't run away with the game. So there's always a chance of us going to City, playing against City and doing well. And Benfica, I'll be honest, don't know much about them. How they're getting on this season.
I know. You used to play for Benfica, Pablo.
Yeah, youth level, yeah. I've not followed them at all for the past 2-3 years, so I'm not sure what sort of squad we're going to be facing.
Did they let you go and you're very salty about it? Like,
yeah, I became a Porto fan for a few days. No, but yeah, I mean, I don't know what Benfica can offer. in terms of like a threat to us. But I'm pretty confident with the team that we got that we can pretty much take on Benfica and go strong against City.
What I can tell you about Benfica is that they are not enjoying the best of Portuguese league seasons this year. Sitting in fourth, they've won one of their last 5 games. So it's all set up for them to utterly smash us on Thursday, is basically what it is going to be. We're now on to the section of the show where it is time for user questions. So if you do have one for the guys and I was about to say guys and Jess, then the guys and girls, but there is only one. But if you've got any questions for our wonderful panel this evening, then please make sure you drop it into the chat box. Use the capital Q, and we will try and get through as many of them as feasibly possible. Tom, the first one's going to you from Van, who says, who do you think will start on Thursday, Aubameyang or Lacazette?
I think it has to be Laka. I think he was rested. I think Laka is one of those guys that, I don't think he's a 60-gamer season player. So I think if he's well rested and he's got fire in his belly, I wouldn't say he's unstoppable. I don't know if anyone's ever described Lacazette as unstoppable, but he does need that energy to, really put himself about and hold up the play. And I know Oba scored 3 goals, but when he went missing for that period, we can't forget what Laka was doing for the squad and how he put his arm around the young players. And I mean, he was part of that whole little clique, and getting that swag football, back again. So I still think he's got, something to add. And he loves European football, right? That's what it's all about. So I wouldn't be too surprised to see him start. Would you put Oba back on the left? Maybe. It's a difficult one, but I would expect to see Laka start. I think it could be tough to see him on the bench for that game.
It follows on nicely, Jess, for your question. If I hope it's saying who would you play as that kind of front 4 with the attacking. It's interesting to add on to that. Aubameyang scores a hat-trick as a striker. He did skew towards the left tactically during the game against Leeds, but do you continue to try to build that form up in the play, or as Tom says, do you bring Lacazette back in after being rested?
Yeah, I think you bring Lacazette back in. Again, I'm looking at the Man City game. We need to put our best foot forward. And I think at this point, after what I've seen against Leeds, I want to see Aubameyang play center forward against Man City in the same way that we played against Leeds. But Lacazette's been rested, so let's play him in Europe. You know who else is really good in Europe? Pepe. So let's play Lacazette. Let's play Pepe. Pick Martinelli to play on the other side. Don't even look at Willian. Just put Martinelli on the other side. That front 3 should do some sort of damage. So
you're resting Saka then?
I'm resting. I would rest Saka. Yeah. I would, and then as the cam, I would play Odegaard because he hasn't had a lot of playing time, and I think ESR has done enough where I know he's going to start against Man City. So and then just see from there. But that's who I would start. That's who I would play.
Vinny Eagle also are saying, what do you think is our strongest front 4? And that kind of carries on from what we were saying. So I'll move to Daniel's question, hoping that Vinny is satisfied that we've covered that. Pablo, Daniel Roberts says, where does Chambers, Nelson and Eddie fit into this team for the rest of the season?
They don't. No.
Yeah. Took the words right out of my mouth. Literally. They actually don't.
I hope they're not watching. I love you boys, but
yes. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. Like I say, I mean, unfortunately for them, like for Nelson, for example, there was so much high hopes for him, especially when he went out on loan to Germany. Everyone was like, oh, Nelson's going to be the one. But since then, you've had the rise of Saka. Martinelli has come in. Smith Rowe has come in. And he's just slowly falling down a pecking order. I'm surprised he didn't go out on loan. I don't know whether it was just possibly shortage of players or maybe some sort of deal didn't go through, but I'm surprised he didn't go out on loan. Chambers, again, has been very unfortunate with injuries. You look at our back line now, I can't see him getting ahead of David Luiz or Holding or Murray or Gabriel, or even if you played him a right back. Is he better than Bellerin? Depends. It's hard to say. I really don't. But it's sort of like you wouldn't find a place for him in the team. And Eddie Nketiah, I'm yet to be convinced by him. I know he's done really well on the under-23s and for England under-21s or whatever it is. But as for Arsenal itself, it's just ain't cutting it at the moment. So to me, I can't see any of them playing the rest of the season.
I'm in complete agreement with you, mate. Nelson, I think to be honest, I look at all of those as sellable assets for the summer, players that we can actually get a good fee for and then reinvest that money into the squad. We've got the depth. We've talked about the depth. We've got at the back, and you're talking about Chambers, you've got those 4 that you mentioned, and you've got Mavropanos and Saliba coming back as well. We are not short in that area. Arsenal are supposedly even looking to maybe bring in another right-sided centre-back. So who knows at this stage what Arsenal are going to do in that area. Nelson, I mean, you've got so much ahead of you now with Martinelli, Willian, Aubameyang, Saka, all of these guys, Pepe, that can play in these wide areas. Erdegaard can also play in the wide area, and he showed that. And Smith Rowe has also played in wider areas too. You just don't see a future for Nelson at the moment.
You need to add Willock to that as well.
Interesting that you say Willock. Why would you say Willock? Well,
I think he's part of that sellable asset.
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant in the wide areas. I was like, when has Willock played as a winger?
No. But just some guys to consider for the summer, because Ainsley and Joe, they also, a couple of guys, maybe you could squeeze 15, 20 mil for each of them. You could probably get that for Reece as well, if you're being honest. So we got to look at that, because I've got to think that the next crop, you've probably got Miguel Aziz probably going to come through into the first team next year. So 1 or 2 of these guys got to go, right? If they're not going to cut it in the first 15, you've surely got to make space for the next under 23, under 19 guy to come through. And surely Miguel's going to be one of them, right? So if you can if any of these guys have a good loan and you can bring in 20 M's, then, that's got to be something you consider.
It surely has to be, because, as you say, we don't want to get into another Balogun situation whereby you've stuck with these young guys like Nketiah for too long and you've banked on him maybe turning into something. He hasn't. And then by this point, you've really kind of missed out on what could have been a future for Balogun at the club, who looks at it now going, well, I'm not getting any minutes. Why do I want to stay? And that could have been very different. Tom, we've got quite a few questions now, actually, guys. So if we can try and keep answers as speedy as possible, more than just one word would be great, of course, but streamline these answers. Luiz gets an extension in his contract, asked Greg. So we've kind of talked about this a bit, but Tom, what do you make about a possible extension for Luiz?
It's tough. I think we should. To be honest, I'd rather give an extension to an old defender than to an old forward, because I think, I know we suffered during the Wenger years from lack of experience. So we had a crop of young players who didn't have anyone to learn from. So, you had your Theo Walcotts. Who did he really have to look up to learn positional play? Not that many, because it was a super young squad. But I think if the young players that we've got now, they seem to be tactically there, quite intelligent. So I don't really worry too much. Saka has played with Ozil. He's seen the top guys. He knows what it's all about. So I don't really worry about the attacking players. But defensively, I don't think you can be go too inexperienced at the back. So I kind of get it, having a senior kind of, figurehead at the club, whatever, seen it all, done it all, whatever. And I guess Luiz brings that. But I'd much rather, have a Luiz there than have a Willian, Laka, and all these guys going into their 30s, kind of staying, in the squad. So if it was up to me, if I would definitely keep Luiz, if it meant we got rid of a couple of players further up the pitch. Whether, for me, that would, naturally be, Laka either this season or next, and then Willian as well. And then we keep Luiz, because you do need 1 or 2 heads.
I think your logic is sound. The only counter to that would be what we talked about earlier, is if Arsenal want to move on, I feel like Luiz is one of those players that maybe we do need to move on from collectively. I agree with all the players you say about moving on, but it's just something I think about mentally, moving on from players of the ilk of Luiz. We could do a whole podcast about Luiz. Jess, Juan says, do you think that the lineup used yesterday is the type that would help us beat down low blocks?
Absolutely. I think for sure. That's what we've always needed, right? We've needed more players with the football IQ, the players that could pick the lock. And even like if you go back to the Aston Villa game where we spent 80 minutes, 85 minutes trying to pick a lock, Arteta did not bring anybody on that could really do that. And Ceballos was the sub to bring on for that game. So I think when we do play against like the Burnleys and teams that like to sit back, Newcastle, teams like that, get as many thinkers as you can on that pitch. And if you don't have thinkers, you need chaos merchants, one or the other. So I would consider that again. If we need to pick the lock and we need more attacking options, people that could, like even what Ceballos did with like that little pass, that little nutmeg pass that he did.
Yeah,
we've been missing that. Where's that been? So yeah, for sure, I would definitely do that again.
I was going to scroll down through the questions. Apologies if we don't miss some. I want to try and get some of the people that have put some of the more newer questions in as well. Don Giovanni Pablo says, we have the second best defence and good attacking numbers since Chelsea. How many players do we need to challenge next year? Or I think he means change next year if we keep Odegaard and get Aubameyang firing?
We're not too far away. To be honest with you, I think we definitely need a centre midfielder, although Xhaka has been very, very good sort of latter half.
Recently.
I was saying the latter half of the season. We definitely need a centre midfielder to play alongside him. I think getting someone like Odegaard would literally make us a much better team next season. If you give him 6 months now or whatever it is, left of his loan spell to get used to the Premier League, next year you sign him, he could be a very valuable player and give Smith Rowe a little bit of a respite as well, because at the moment we're relying on Smith Rowe for that position. There's not really anybody else there. So it'd be good to have him. Apart from that, to be honest with you, on the right back. That's not having an agenda against Bellerin, is really not. I like Cedric, but I think we need someone that is just a higher quality as a right back. Apart from that, we're fine. I think we're sort of getting there. We are literally getting there.
Yeah, I agree that I think that we're only kind of those few positions away, which has been helped by the arrival of Gabriel and Partey. I do feel like a little bit of deja vu in the sense that I feel like I've been saying that for a good 15 years, that we've only been a couple of players away from being to that next step, and now we're sitting in 10th, and I'm like, oh, what has kind of happened here? Interesting, some people in the chat were saying about Willock's loan was for 18 months. I mean, I just double-checked while Pablo was speaking there, and I mean, Newcastle's tweet when they signed him says that he's joined on loan until the end of the season. So I knew that there were some links and rumours about it being extended maybe. But as far as I'm aware, at the moment, it is only for the 6 months. But unless that has changed very recently, it is just for the 6 months. We'll go around one more time. We'll try and get 3 more questions in. Tom Yo-Yo says, what lesson do you believe Arteta learned from exiting at this stage last season in the Europa League, and what will he do differently? Good question, actually.
Don't go out at this stage of the competition.
But how, Tom? How won't we do that?
I mean, I've tried to blank out that game because, honestly, what happened, man? That was just...
Leno happened, unfortunately.
Oh, man. It was so unexpected. But the thing is, it's... For me, I don't feel like you can ever really bank on cup football. I think there's, cup football is always going to be a bit of, luck involved, as we all know. We should have won a Champions League. We weren't lucky. It happens. So there's always that element of luck. I think the best thing is obviously just putting your best foot forward in every single game. So, I hope, he doesn't overthink it. I hope he looks at the 2 games individually and tries to pick the best teams for each individual tie. It's going to be a strange one at the neutral grounds and the away goals rule, and it's definitely not going to be an easy experience for a rookie manager. But I back Arteta. I just hope he doesn't tinker. Actually, let me answer the question very simply. Don't play Willian. Finish. We'll go. That's it.
This is, Jess, this is a horrible question to ask because it puts you on the spot a little bit. But Hovik says, if Arsenal has a transfer kitty of £60 million and can only buy 2 players, who would you want?
Ivan Toney and Basuma.
Okay. Right. I think we may need to negotiate a little bit to get the prices down. Fingers crossed. But yeah, I'm in agreement. I like those two.
Just sell Nketiah to Brighton. You know,
to Brentford.
They either one, to Brighton or Brentford. Somebody who needs a striker. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, he was linked to Brighton in January, wasn't he? So yeah, maybe that 60 million can be extended if we do manage to move on one of these youngsters. Final question, which I'm scrolling up for. Let's go to Toby, who says, Pablo, will Odegaard and Emile Smith-Rowe once again start on Thursday? Love from Missouri, because Toby, congratulations to him, did get a football, or now I should say soccer scholarship out there. So congratulations, Toby. But what do you make of that, Pablo?
No, I don't think they'll start together. I think one or the other. I personally think he's going to go for Odegaard as a number 10 role, and I think you're definitely going to see Pepe, a little bit like Jess said earlier. Definitely see Pepe. You'll definitely see hopefully you'll see Martinelli rather than Willian on one of the corners, and Lacazette starting. I think he might even keep Aubameyang playing for 60 minutes and put him out on the left to get Lacazette up front. But I can't see Smith-Rowe and Odegaard playing, because personally, I know Smith-Rowe's young, but he kind of needs a little bit of pressure taken off him. Yeah.
I don't think he'll play, but I think Emile Smith-Rowe will finally get the rest that he definitely needs at this stage. And I think I agree with Jess in that Odegaard is most likely to start of the two, if any of them end up doing. Anyway, that brings us quite nicely to the conclusion of today's show as we get the predictions for our next 2 games, because we have got a European game. So no explanation needed, just a scoreline. Jess, I'm going to start with you. Benfica and Man City, 2 scorelines. What are you predicting?
2-0 for the Benfica game, and
to us, I hope.
To us, and 1-1 against Man City.
Awesome. Pablo?
I'm going to say 3-0 to us against Benfica, and against City, 2-2.
Okay. I feel like you're trying to one-up Jess in every area there. Tom?
I'm going to say Benfica 2-2.
Okay.
And City 2-1 to City, unfortunately.
Wow, bringing us back to reality there, Tom. I'm regretting asking you on. I'm only kidding, mate. In the chat box, getting some of your predictions. Nicholas says 2-0 against Benfica, 1-1 against City. I think someone's copying someone. Daniel Roberts says 5-0. Sonogo to score 4 of them. I don't know what era you're living in, Dan, but I can tell you that's probably not going to happen. Van says Arsenal 2, Benfica 1. Dilly says 3-1. Got to be honest here, and 2-0 to Manchester City. Yannick says 3-2 for Arsenal against Benfica, but we are going to lose 3-1 to City a little bit later on in the week. Sorry that we couldn't get through all of your questions and your predictions. We will try best I can next time. Thank you to my fantastic panel. First of all, Jess, thank you so much for coming on this evening. Do you want to tell people where they can find you and your fantastic new show, which may have a certain familiar face on it very soon?
Yeah. So you guys can follow me on Twitter at It's Jessinho. And if you're looking for She Knows Arsenal, Tom will be a guest on there for, I think, the Man City game. You can go on YouTube and type in She Knows Arsenal, and you'll find all my content there. So that's where you can find me.
Please do. She's had some fantastic guests on, including Elia, and obviously our good friend Drew is often over there too. So make sure you check out Jess's stuff. Pablo, thank you so much, mate. I mean, I want to do an update on your follower situation, because we talked about this the other day. Have we done anything? Has anything happened? Let me check. You've got 5 more followers. That's
yes, Tom.
To 20.
I'm going up in the world.
Pablo's on 20 followers now. I'm sure we can get that a little bit higher. Don't give Pablo a follow. Thank you, mate. Appreciate you coming
That's
on.
all right. No problem. Thanks for having us, Tom.
No problem at all. Finally, Tom, we finally got your technical difficulties out of the way, mate, which did mean you missed my my insulting introduction to you, because you look like you had the glassiest glasses I've ever seen, the cloudiest glasses when you were on earlier. I was like, how are you even seeing the computer screen?
Yeah, mate. Sorry about the delay. Good to see everyone again. Yeah, good chat this evening. Good to meet the other guys who are on the show tonight. And yeah, big week. So excited. And I think I always come on after a win. So I'm actually quite happy. Let's keep it up. Hopefully it's not too long.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, the other choices weren't going to give you the best of opportunities. We lost against Wolves and Villa, but you got it back for the Leeds game, which is awesome. I should tell you that next week's podcast on the 21st, we'll be joined by Drew, Adam and French to talk about the Manchester City game. And on Tuesday's Let's Talk Arsenal show, I'm going to be joined by French. So that's tomorrow at 5 o'clock to discuss all things Arsenal on the Let's Talk Arsenal show. There is a link in the description to Football Prizes where you can get your tickets for the signed Dennis Bergkamp shirt if you haven't already. So make sure you get tickets. They are selling out pretty darn quick. We will be back very, very soon. You can follow us at The Guntalk TV and at Tom Cantor Media. And of course, if you've enjoyed the video, drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Other than that, it's been a pleasure to speak to you as always. And as always, up the Arsenal.